On this episode of Behind the Meal, I talk with Rich Zeck, Executive Director of the Pitt County Council on Aging in Greenville, North Carolina. We'll discuss some of the challenges they face that hit very close to home to anyone familiar with Meals on Wheels, and the way they not only overcome these challenges, but thrive while providing services far beyond just a meal. All that and more on this episode of Behind the Meal with me, your host, Dave Colling. Hello, and welcome to Behind the Meal. Join me as we delve into the stories behind Meals on Wheels, meeting the incredible people who make it all happen. Please join me in welcoming Rich Zeck, Executive Director of Pitt County Council on Aging. Rich is a passionate advocate for older adults, working to ensure they have the resources, support, and opportunities to age with dignity. His leadership has strengthened community partnerships and enhanced services for seniors across Pitt County. As an educator and elected official, Rich has been instrumental in building a better community in Pitt County and beyond. Rich, welcome to Beyond the Meal. I'm so happy to have you here and have an opportunity to talk to you about not just your Meals on Wheels program, but all the things you're doing down there.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, and there's lots to talk about. So let's get the ball rolling.
For sure, and I shouldn't say down there. I'm up here, and I'm up in Minnesota. You're in North Carolina, so looking at the map, it's down, but there's no judgment.
No, absolutely.
So to start, just give us a little introduction to yourself and your role at the Council on Aging there, and maybe just a little bit about the community you're working with.
Sure. So July 1st of this year, I will be here 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So coming from the north up there, from Michigan down here to North Carolina, huge life change, huge cultural change,
Mm-hmm.
very much a demographic change as well. So, part of being here, our organization's been around since 1975. So we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and I'm the first business person as executive director of the Council on Aging in 50 years. And so, my passion for seniors comes from a business perspective because I used to be
Mm-hmm.
in corporate life. And so, but nonprofits really are businesses.
Yeah,
We just don't give the money back to the shareholders. We give it back to the community. So to take that business component and the nonprofit component to really attack hunger in our community has been my driving force for the last 10 years.
that's fantastic. And I know you said you're coming up on your 50th anniversary.
10 years.
No, your tenure, but is it 50 years for the
Oh,
council,
50.
right?
Yes, 50.
Wow. And looking back at 50 years, not that you were there, but what inspired the organization to begin with?
So I think part of it is as an elected official, so I get to talk from a couple of different perspectives as a former businessman, entrepreneur, elected official, and now a nonprofit leader. Um, it costs a lot from a governmental perspective to feed people.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, in their ultimate wisdom 50 years ago, they said, we're going to create a nonprofit who could do it better, more efficient, more effective than county government. So they created this nonprofit, and that's how it grew, is really saying, hey, we're required by law to do this, this, and this, and we're going to have to hire staff, so on and so forth. It would be better if we spur this off, and then we'll support them. And
Yeah.
that's how the Council on Aging in Pitt County came to be where we are today, is a partnership with the county, but a solely autonomous nonprofit. So our name is a little misleading. It is Pitt County Council on Aging,
Mm-hmm.
but it's only geographic. And part of that nomenclature sometimes confuses people where they think, well, you're government, we're not going to volunteer, we're not
Right.
going to donate. So we do a very heavy job of telling people we're the Council on Aging, and we leave off the first part.
Do you do services outside the county at all, or
No, we are strictly
okay?
in just in Pitt County. Pitt County serves has a population of around 200,000 people,
Oh, okay.
with about 20% being older adults. So we have a potential market of 40,000 older adults in Pitt County.
Wow. Well, like you said, though, it does cost a lot to feed people, but the other side of that is it costs a lot not to feed them too.
It does, and that's the part of education that I think many programs miss is not that necessarily that people are hungry, and yes, we use the word food insecurity,
Hmm.
but sometimes our words, while we're trying not to offend the people that I deal with, they're flat out just hungry. There's
Right.
no food insecurity. They're hungry. And so trying to really look at the human side of what the issue is of how do we serve these people? How do we meet the needs? And that's what we do day in and day out is look at how can we make a difference today?
For sure. Well, speaking of how you're making a difference, what are some of the services? Obviously, we'll get into a little bit more of nutrition services,
Sure.
but looking at your program, you guys have a wide swath of things that you're doing down there. I mean, I saw some trips, I saw events going on. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So one of the things, the word senior center has some really negative connotations to it.
Hmm.
In fact, myself, when used to think of senior centers, I would think of a place where older people are knitting, crocheting, bingo, sleeping, watching TV.
Right.
Older people have changed. This isn't who they are. They're not our grandparents, seniors anymore. These are active, engaged. So they're looking for more than just the typical kind of thing. So we have like four real prongs to our business approach. We do have the Meals on Wheels program.
Hmm.
We have Medicare counseling, which last year saved $1.4 million dollars in real pocket savings back to residents of Pitt County. Our third leg is aging services, which is a one-stop shop for any kind of aging question you may have. It includes falls prevention, home safety, assessing the individual for the holistic need. And our fourth area that you mentioned is programming and volunteering. We do programming on anything you could imagine. And a sample would be we've had classes on beer, we've had classes on wine, coffee. Just because we're older doesn't mean we're not interested in things. We've had ballet classes, we've had woodworking classes, stained glass, and we do go on trips because part of the nonprofit is, most nonprofits will beg and plead for money. We don't do that here. What we do is we provide education and services and look for alternate income streams like the trips.
Hmm.
We receive $25 for every person that fills up a seat on a bus. So we could get a bus of 50 people and get $2,000, which goes back into our home delivered meals program. So we're feeding people through activities on people who can afford a trip.
Oh, that's fantastic. And looking at your nutrition programs. Obviously, there's the Meals on Wheels program. Are you doing congregate meals as well? Are you doing
Yes,
what are some? Just give us a kind of a
sure.
broad sense of that.
So we're doing home delivered and congregate.
Hmm.
And so round numbers, see, now we're serving about 110,000 meals a year. So on a day-to-day basis, we do hot meals Monday through Friday. We do about 400 people every day. We have 100 people on the waiting list. So that 400, 100, we got 500 people.
Mm-hmm.
Average income is $9,400. Poverty is $13,000.
Mm-hmm.
So we are feeding truly the least of the people. And, people will talk about food pantries and food banks, and those are great. Those are wonderful. Except the people we're serving are homebound.
Yeah.
They have limited caregivers, limited transportation. They cannot get to those entities to get food. So the meal that we're delivering, it may be the only thing they eat all day, or at least the only nutritional thing that they eat all day. So
Sure.
that's really Our nutritional program, we do insure, so we sell that at a reduced cost. Um, but our focus is really on home delivered meals. So I mentioned we do about 400.
Hmm.
Congregate is probably about 70 meals. So 330 meals to the home, 70 to our 6 congregate sites.
Okay. And those meals, where are you making them all in house? Are you getting them outside catered or?
No, and so when you talk earlier how everyone does everything
Yeah.
different, so one of the decisions we made early on is the cost of meals. So,
Hmm.
if some people do it or have an entity, there's a lot of overhead with people and meal preparation and all that. And we're not experts in meal preparation. We're experts in aging. So, Aramark, which is a national
Hmm.
food, they actually prepare our meals and deliver them to 6 mini distribution points across the county. And then our volunteers redistribute them out from there. So they're made every morning. They're temperature sensitive, obviously, to get here. We're temping them when they get here, and then we temp them when we deliver them. So they all meet the criteria for safety and health standards. So, we have roughly, it takes about 50 volunteers a day
Yeah.
for the operation. We have about 30 routes. And so the 30 volunteers will deliver a route, which is about 10 to 12 people per route. They have a bag of hot and a bag of cold, milk, bread, butter in one,
Yep.
and so forth. So that's how we distribute them out.
And with your volunteers, now we didn't talk really much about you and your staff. So who's doing the volunteer recruitment? Who's creating those routes? What does your staff look like?
So our staff is we have a director and an assessor and the operation or meals person. So all of our people are assessed before they even enter the protocol here.
Sure.
So we have an assessor 40 hours a week is because again we're assessing the 500 people every 6 months required by the federal block grant and an in-person assessment once a year.
Hmm.
So that person pretty much does that exclusively. One person sets up every day the cancellations, holds for the meals, and then
Sure.
the other director is working the budget because we have 10, 11 different revenue streams. So we may be serving 400 meals, but different revenue streams pay for portions of the meal. So that's a lot of the clerical, operational side that we do. So technically, 2.5 people operate and do the whole home delivered congregate meals program here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget about, they see the door knock from the volunteer, but it's all the work and all the resources that go in to make that one door knock happen.
Oh, it does. And I think that's part of what people don't understand is the complexity and even grants nowadays. A lot of people will get
Hmm.
grants and it'll be for food, but you still have overhead costs to administer the food.
Right.
And that's really becoming a challenge anymore too, is trying to make it work because it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy behind. And the theory on nonprofits is they're overworked and underpaid. So we keep that mantra alive here.
You're doing your best, it sounds like.
Yes.
Right, right. Well, where are you getting a lot of your volunteers from? I assume they're from the community, but so many programs our volunteers don't look much demographically different than the people we're serving sometimes.
That would be true, but it's also a little shift in the paradigm. So I'm also the president of the North Carolina Senior Center Alliance.
Okay.
So I do a lot of consulting with other senior centers and looking at how, what, and where and why. So one of the things, so the pre-COVID, average volunteer was 77 years old.
Sure.
During COVID and after COVID, today our average volunteer is 54.
Mm.
So what happened? What happened was during COVID, the older people were afraid to come out. So the next generation came up who maybe got laid off, weren't working, stay at home moms. stay-at-home dads, and we started getting a whole new generation. And we actually marketed to businesses from a perspective.
Hmm.
How great is a company who lets their employees once or twice a month go and deliver meals? They get PR and I get the warm body. So our volunteer base has really expanded to not the typical of what most senior center volunteers look like. And again, when you're carrying two bags, it's a little weighty and it's hard for some older volunteers to deliver the meals. So, we encourage even volunteers, bring your grandkids, bring your children, let them see what is not happening at your house, but at somebody else's house.
Yeah, no, I try to. Yeah, I don't. When I get out of the office, I try to. I have a high schooler. Try to bring him out with me. He's always willing to do work for other people. When I do something for me,
Yeah.
that's a different question. But it's always good to see him out there doing stuff like that, and other young people too.
Yeah,
We.
I mean, because again, regardless of whatever business we're in, sometimes we're a little jaded by reality. Because myself, I'll go home tonight, I'll have a good dinner,
Hmm.
I have a roof over my head, I have a car, I have clothing, and the majority of the people that we serve don't.
Right.
So when I was in corporate life, what was important was money. Where I'm now, what's important are human beings and not just numbers. And these are just real people with real lives. And so that's another shift in our paradigm is we want to share with people um, the face and people behind these issues.
Right.
Just like your podcast today, it's really about real people talking about real issues, having a conversation,
Mhm.
and maybe something I say or you say might I never thought of that. That's a great idea. And no matter where you are in the country, if somebody in Oregon is watching this right now, they're going to say, I got to reach out to my local senior center and find out about this.
Right.
Because we have private pay meals with kids that live all over the country that want to make sure their mom or dad are getting fed.
Hmm.
And so they call and say, yeah, my mom lives there. I live in Colorado. Can you make sure she gets a meal? And they private pay to make sure their mom gets fed. So again, through social media,
Yeah.
people are hearing more about the problem. So what I'm doing today, it's really not about us. It's the good of the whole. How can we serve more people?
No, and that's the mission versus well, the private sector versus our nonprofit sector. It's a different mission. So we say it's making money versus making people's lives better. And
And
not that
so
money doesn't help because we need money to do it.
well, it does. But if I come to you and say, "Can I have $10?" One of the first questions you're going to say is, "For what?"
Right.
So I tell a story to people. Very rarely do I ever ask for money. It's really about connecting with people on a human level that says, I want to help you. How can I help you? Well, you can financially help us by making a donation. So it's not really about the money. It's really about reconnecting humans. And even on the political side, what I ask people, I do about 80 talks a year to all kinds of different groups. And as I ask a question,
Yeah.
we have 100 people who are hungry today, need to be fed. Do you think whether somebody in Washington, D.C., or in our case, the state capital of Raleigh, a
Hmm.
Democrat, a Republican, will feed anyone today? No, but they're working on it. They've been working on it for 50 years. The only people who are going to feed someone today is you or me. It's that simple.
Hmm.
Well, it's not. It is. We make it so complicated. And so we put all of our time and energy focusing on those people to come and save us. Yeah, they're not coming to save us. They're not coming. The block grant, those are our federal dollars to go
Hmm.
back to feeding the community, really haven't been increased in 4 years.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what political party is in charge, it doesn't matter. So we have to look for alternative revenue streams, different creative ways to feed people. And that's what we're doing.
Well, what some of those people you're feeding? Give us a little idea of the demographic. Urban, rural. What do the people on the ground look like that you're
Sure.
feeding?
So I mentioned we have a population of 40,000 seniors in a
Yeah.
200,000 community. So the people we're serving do not match census data.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at male, female, black, white, um, income, low, high, um, we exceed all those areas. Majority female, 65%
Yep.
female. African American, about 55 when the population is only 40. And then the income level, as I stated before,
Yeah.
significantly below poverty. So that's the average person who is receiving a meal is a female African American living in poverty in a rural area.
Okay.
Pitt County is pretty much 50-50 rural, and our large city is Greenville, where we're
Mm-hmm.
located. And so it's pretty much rural, so they're isolated and they're out in the
Yeah.
boondocks.
So your routes could be maybe 10 people, but they could be a few miles.
Yeah, and that's why there's many distribution
Right.
points. So they come to that area, pick up the meals, and it's a shorter distance. We do have 30 routes that go out every day. So that's that helps us to get
Yeah.
quicker to them. So an average route and how we advertise. The thing with volunteering that you mentioned before is I think people got volunteering wrong. They think it's a commitment, a lot of hours, a lot of time. And so what we advertise is we need 1 day, 1 hour, one time a month. That's it.
Right.
That's the only commitment I need. And so, if are even working 40 hours a week, that's 160 hours. If you don't have 1 hour, shame. But that's how simple it is. They said, that's all you need? I said, that's all we
That's it.
need. So then they start doing it and say, hey, I can do another day. I can do another day.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of maybe letting them have their own misinterpretations. We're right up front. Here's what we need.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. And you mentioned that, go back to the volunteer piece too, that that age has really come down, and some of those the corporate volunteers that you're working with. Obviously things changed after COVID for a lot of folks on that volunteer side. What have you done to kind of keep those volunteers coming back, or maybe kind of replacing those volunteers? Volunteer appreciation points, or is or is it just you guys are so great, everybody just wants to come back too?
Well, not to sound braggadocious, but if you treat people well, they treat you well.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, the Greenville Police Department is one of our biggest volunteers.
Yeah.
They had one guy who was off duty and his dad got Meals on Wheels. And so he wanted to do it and didn't realize how easy and simple it was. They have 22 police officers who volunteer on their off shift to come and deliver meals.
That's great.
So we don't have to schedule. We have one contact at a business and say, okay, your company, your church, your business
Mm-hmm.
is the third Tuesday of every month. Make sure you have a body here. We do nothing else. We know that somebody there. Now, if they have someone who cancels, they got to find someone because there's a hole. So it lightens our burden for volunteers.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, and I hear that from a lot of other programs. It's amazing how many public servants, not just police departments, but for fire departments, city employees,
Yeah.
county employees will come in and do this. I think that, there's something that there's that public, they understand it a little bit more than maybe there's somebody off the street. There's less explanation you have to give them
Yeah,
to
it
what's
and it
happening.
gets it gets back even to in corporate life, the theory on a good salesperson is
Hmm.
that they do the ask.
Right.
Will you buy this product? And I think when it comes to volunteering, are we really asking? Are we going to the local fire department and say, we need you guys to volunteer. Can you give us one person one time a month? And I think it's uncomfortable with many people to go out and ask. And so, again, that connection with human people And it looks good. It really does. I mean, we market it all up when there's a firefighter or policeman knocking on the door. I mean, it's a feel good thing, and so
Oh yeah.
we exploit it.
And why not?
Yes.
What are some of the partnerships and their roles beyond just that, like the volunteer activities that you're doing that you may work with healthcare facilities, maybe other government entities?
So one of the things, people have to be real, like particularly in our business and in most of these businesses, how do we get to rural, isolated older adults who more than likely don't have a computer and certainly don't have internet?
Mm-hmm.
So we can put together slick websites and brochures and all that kind of stuff, but we ain't getting them. How do we get to them? So we changed up our entire marketing approach years ago. When I came here 10 years ago, the average person we served who called us
Mm-hmm.
was 78 years old. Makes sense. We're an aging business.
Right, right.
Today, 47 years old.
Hmm.
We don't serve people in their 40s or 50s. What's happened is through social media, we have targeted the people we want, their kids, their grandkids, college kids. I mean, two times removed, who will see something on social media and tell their Mom, Granny would like this event the COA is doing.
Right.
And then Mom tells Granny. So we've got three generations. So we've got thousands of influencers and marketers out there and they don't even know it. So who's calling us? We're no longer targeting older adults, people over
Mm-hmm.
60. We're targeting the next generation to help us to get to the people we can't get to.
Well, that's one of the things I noticed about your program too is your social media presence. Are you doing that on your own? Who's that?
Yeah,
Who's
yeah,
kind of,
we do that.
yeah,
Yes.
the royal
Uh,
we.
and part of it is even our newsletter. So
Sure.
one of the things that I noticed on when I travel to senior centers and newsletters is it looks like a nursing home with construction paper, pictures on the wall, and the cork boards. And in
Right.
the newsletter, it would have birthdays and recipes and oh, Mary Sue died. And that's tragic, and I'm not minimizing. But if you're new, interested in coming to a senior center, you don't know any of those people.
Right.
What's going to bring you to a senior center are activities.
Yeah.
And so that's our newsletter is exclusively everything that's happening in a marketing piece because again, color, pop, brevity, that's what people's attention span is. Mine's about 3 seconds. If I'm not attracted, I'm moving on.
Right.
So yeah, social media has revolutionized who we are, what we do. It's tapped into markets that have never been attainable for us.
Well, it's good to hear you talk about that. I mean, I think there's so many programs that don't take advantage of the social media because they think oh, we're too small. Our seniors aren't online. But to hear you talk about reaching those influencers in a way that really brings those services to the people that need it. Yeah.
And a lot of young people, that's how usually I'll start a talk with a group of young people is you're probably wondering what you're sitting here hearing an old guy talk about old people. And here's why. When people are on Medicaid or food stamps, you are paying for those.
Mhm.
And if people aren't healthy, you're paying for higher insurance rate. People aren't naturally sick. There's a lot of conditions in it. When you're living in poverty, you're buying poor quality food, carbs and sugars, and most of the people are diabetic to begin with. So how do we educate people to get better food? And that's through the process of teaching people and educating people. And again, that's how people begin to think. And I say, you go to your grandma's house and she's got an apron on, and oh, here's your chocolate chip cookies and a glass of milk. The people we're serving probably don't own an apron and certainly aren't cooking cookies and may not even have milk.
Right.
And they're shocked. And so we want them to know there's a whole nother side that doesn't live in your neighborhood that needs our help.
For sure. It, it, you Looking at long term, you mentioned, talking to young folks. What are the goals? What are some initiatives for your program that you'd like to see happen in 5 years, 10 years, and what are some of those steps you're taking to get there?
So, part of that really is encompassed in what everyone, and particularly in business, we call
Hmm.
strategic plans.
Sure.
So the thing with strategic plans is I'm assuming 99% of everyone who has a strategic plan planned for COVID. They did not. So sometimes strategic plans are great in theory, but the flexibility of being able to adapt and change is really what's important.
Yeah.
When I look at national trends, a lot of senior centers are closing up because they don't have enough people coming to support it. And part of it is they haven't changed with the times. They're still doing knitting, crocheting, and watching TV, which are okay, but that's not what the next generation wants. So they ain't going to these senior centers and they're shriveling them up.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to adapt and change. And so our programming significantly changed because again, if if it's not, what do you want? Just because I've been in the senior business for 30 years, yeah, I'm an expert, but the people have changed. You haven't changed. And so some senior centers don't adapt and change. Just like with meals. When I got here, 92% of every meal we served was to a diabetic. You know what we were serving? White rice, high salt content,
Right.
carbs. I said, wait, these people are diabetic and we're giving them diabetic food? Help me to understand. Well, we can't afford it. I said, we cannot not afford it. So today, everyone gets a diabetic friendlier meal,
Hmm.
and then we do have diabetic meals. But
Hmm.
again, we're part of the problem. We're feeding obese people obese food. So
Right.
so we've got, again, it's part of educating. It's part of sharing with the community how we can make changes. So 5, 10 years from now, again, it's continuing to really do the next level of educating nutrition. Again, how important, ask a 75-year-old, what's your immune system? Well, I don't know. It's something about makes me sick. Well, your food feeds your immune system. If your immune system's stronger, you're less likely to maybe fall, to maybe get sick, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
When you're sitting on the couch all day long and no physical activity, you're getting depressed, you're getting bored, you're not mentally engaged, you're declining physically rapidly. Come here. We'll get your tail going and get you active. And so that's why our business continues to literally explode. We did an expansion a couple of years ago
Hmm.
because we ran out of room. And ironically, even talking about COVID, I think we were the second or third senior center in the state of North Carolina to open after COVID. We made a commitment to move forward to get because we saw what was happening with people in their homes,
Sure.
to get them come back. And if it's not the truth, you would have seen the front lines of the newspapers. COA is killing seniors by bringing them back. Didn't happen. And so we brought them back, and more people got comfortable. And so we were that beacon during that time. And we went from walking through our doors about 400 people a week. Right now, we do about 1,100 people a week pass through our doors, 1,100 a week,
Mm.
coming up from 400 just pre-COVID. So
Sure.
they're coming, they're hearing, and it is the grassroots and it's the word of mouth.
No, that's fantastic. And one thing I didn't ask you, what brought you into this space? We talked a lot about you coming from the corporate world.
Yeah.
You don't see that a lot, one to the
No.
other. So what was your maybe it was something before you were when you were a kid or whatever it was that made you want to do this kind of work.
Yeah, I can guarantee it had nothing to do with being a kid. And if you would ask, so I've been here 10 years and I was with a nonprofit in Grand Rapids for 7 years.
Hmm.
So 18 years ago, if you would have asked me if I was ever going to work with old people, I said, no way. I'm a corporate guy. In the short, correct version is sometimes we go through trauma in life that knocks us aside the head. Like, you're eating terrible your whole life. You go to the doctor one day and he says, "Hey, you got cancer. If you don't change your ways, it's
Yeah.
not a good story."
Hmm.
And I actually retired 18 years ago from corporate life, owned a couple coffee shops. I actually taught at a university for 11 years. And somebody came to me and said, "Hey, you should look into this job." And I said, "Nah, I don't want it." And in our personal faith journey, it was something to look into. I looked into it and accepted a job, and it's been a journey of 17 years of changing my life upside down. That life is not about me. It's not about money. It's not about titles, prestige, houses, cars, all that kind of stuff. It's really about making a difference.
Yeah.
And the only difference I used to make was profit on the bottom line. Now I make difference in people's lives. And I'm not going to save the world. Our organization will not save the world, but it's one person at a time. And that's at the end of the day, did I make a difference for another human being? And if I fed someone today or got somebody incontinence supplies, I made a difference. And so by giving, I have received more than my entire career working in a nonprofit environment. Yeah, the pay does suck, and yeah, you do get overworked, but at the end of the day, it's a good sweat. It's a healthy sweat, and we're only focused on changing our world. We can't change what happens in Los Angeles, Colorado, New York. That's not our deal. Our deal
Hmm.
is right here with the people and making an impact in our world.
No, that's a great answer. That's a great. I mean, it's personal, and I think that's how it is for everybody. And it's personal, but at the same time, we're doing it for others.
Yeah, and again, it's good to feel good, and
Right.
and we live in a world where people don't feel good. And sometimes it's a little bit of a change of a thought pattern to make a difference. And even with being an elected official, everyone wants to complain, but nobody wants to do anything. I mean, we can protest and do all those things all day long, and that's great. But is it really going to make a difference? And so I wanted to make a difference. I saw what was going on that I didn't feel was right. And I work hard for a living and I pay taxes and I want to make sure my tax dollars are going. And so I ran for an elected official and beat a 14-year I only lived in North Carolina for a year and a half. And so this Midwesterner, some people like to think we're Yankees, but we're actually Midwesterner, came down here and I just look people in the eye and say, "Here's who I am. Here's what I'm going to do. If you don't want it, then good. Don't." And so I got elected and I'm entering my ninth year. I'm starting my ninth year in November.
Okay. Well, congratulations on that too. So you're 1 year ahead at the Council on Aging than you are, and you're
Yes, yes.
well. I mean, it all comes from the same place. It's all about making your community better.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking to do, whether it's as elected official, whether it be as in your professional life. It all comes from the same place.
It does, and everyone has that capacity. I'm no different than anybody else. It's really just about making a choice.
Yeah.
Do I just want to go with the flow, or do I want to make a difference? And it doesn't matter your age. And
Hmm.
that's the other thing is
Hmm.
if you're young or old, everyone has a right. People say, "Well, who are your people at your place?" Well, we have 20 employees. They're all leaders here. Everyone is a leader in some form or another. And I think, we can be a leader in our families. We can be a leader at church. We can be a leader at work. You don't need education. You don't need titles, prestige. Everyone's a leader. We just have to plug into what makes you use the skills that you don't even know that you have. And that's
Yeah.
what we try to do is find people and unleash the Kraken.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, how would people find you if they wanted to reach out to you? Maybe they want to volunteer, or maybe they want to get meals for somebody, or they just want to, send you some money.
Sure. So, we have a website, PittCoa.com. We have a Facebook page, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. You can type in Pitt County. Greenville Senior Center, you'll find us. And the interesting thing about money, I tell people you can always give, but I discourage it because I want people to see where their money's going
Mm-hmm.
before they give. Because I could be a slick car salesman right out here talking today, and oh yeah, I want to buy that car. No, I want you to come and see. I want you to
Yeah.
test drive and actually see that it's just not words. My wife is embedded into my skull. It's not what you say, it's your actions.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can tell me one thing, but your actions disprove it. And so I've always used that as part of my philosophy, just like it doesn't matter who's right, it matters what's right. And sometimes I will make decisions of an executive director I don't really agree with, but I know it's the right thing.
Sure.
And so that's the kind of organization that we lead here and the kind of people we're looking for to come and volunteer or help us out or do whatever. So call us, email us, stop by, uh, no matter where in the country you are, because we do get people from all over the country who do call here sometimes and through social media and
Mm-hmm.
say, who can I call in my area? I'll get on there and Google and say, here's who you need to call. And you told them the executive director down in North Carolina sent you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Rich, this has been fantastic. I think folks are going to hear this and they're gonna say that's something we should be doing. I don't why aren't we doing that? I'm gonna call Rich and see how he does it. So
And I will share this with the world of influence that we have because, again, it's really about how can we make the good of the whole better.
for sure. All right. Well, thank you again, and I hope if we're still doing this a little, in a year or two, we can come back and see where things are at and what's changed and how much better things are going for you.
Absolutely. I would look forward to that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Rich for not only his great work, but his infectious energy and dedication to the people and the community he serves. If you know of a Meals on Wheels program you'd like to hear highlighted on Behind the Meal, please drop me a message. And please share and subscribe to help spread the word about Meals on Wheels. Thank you.